Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch. I'm Judge Andrew Napolitano here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. The economist Frederick Hayek once said that if we are ever again to have good money, that it would not come from the government, it would be issued by private enterprise. This would mean that the monopoly on the printing of currency would be taken away from the unconstitutional Federal Reserve, and that private citizens would be allowed to trade freely in whatever currency they chose. Hayek's reasoning behind this was that in the event of a currency failure, you would not have all those who held a certain currency prone to enormous danger. If, for example, the Federal Reserve overprinted, if the Federal Reserve overprinted and there was a dollar collapse, then those who wisely held other currencies and commodities would be spared the consequences of the collapse that comes from the central planning of the monetary system. An enormously popular bill is being debated in the Senate this week that would perform an audit on our centrally planned monetary system in an attempt to determine what role the Federal Reserve might have had in the recent economic downturn. Popular that it is with the public and the Congress, but apparently not popular with this administration, as we've learned that President Obama has dispatched none other than his Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel, and the Chair of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, to stop this legislation, which has passed the House of Representatives and is moving through the Senate. Though the legislation has bipartisan support and is fueled by grassroots citizens who have petitioned by the hundreds of thousands for its adoption, Senator Chris Dodd, a Democrat, Senator Robert Corker, a Republican, have introduced measures to water down this bill in the Senate. For decades, the American people have been told that the Fed's secrecy was good for them. And now the central planners are pulling out all the stops to kill this legislation before it reveals who's received the Fed's money. Joining me now is the author of the bill to audit the Fed, the author of the bestseller End the Fed, Congressman Ron Paul. Congressman, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge. Good to be with you.
Just to clarify a couple of things first. The other day, you used the phrase corporatism. I think I have it right. What did you mean by that?
Well, you know, that term was first brought out, I think it was with Mussolini. He didn't want to be called a fascist, so he said it's a corporatist or corporatism that he was advocating. To me, it just means the corporations are too close to the government. They're partners in crime. And Mises, the great Austrian economist, said that this is the case. Interventionist economics brings this about, but it always leads to some form of socialism. And fascism, where even the ownership might remain in the hands of the corporations, can still be socialistic in nature. In any case, corporatism is not much softer than calling somebody a socialist. I just think it's a more accurate economic term to use.
Well, we're witnessing the bizarre phenomenon here. One would think that shareholders of corporations and management of corporations would want the government off their backs. But in this day and age, in America in 2010, we see governments that almost welcome getting in bed with, we see corporate officials that almost welcome getting in bed with the government, sort of a fascism or a corporatism by wish or by will, if you will. Is that what you're talking about? I mean, we talking about Goldman Sachs saying to Carl Levin, yes, we want you to regulate us?
Yeah, I think it is. I think most people can understand the Goldman Sachs and the big banks, but even mainstream corporations, and I don't want to pick on anybody in particular, but groups like the Chamber of Commerce aren't all that great, because I came out the lowest rated Republican in the whole Congress for defending the Chamber of Commerce's positions. But then they listed the positions that I didn't agree with them on, and they were all subsidies to big business. So that to me is a sad state of affairs. If you give me the benefit of the doubt and say that I always vote for the market economy and less government, less regulations, you would think I would be a champion of the corporations.
Right.
But if it comes to a small businessman and somebody who understands the market, I think they understand my votes a lot better than that.
Absolutely. All right. H.R. 1207, your bill to audit the Fed. It was added to some monstrosities in the House of Representatives, and it passed as part of those monstrosities. And correct me if I'm wrong, you were compelled by conscience to vote against it because of the regulatory features to which it was added. Do I have that right?
Right. Yeah, that is correct, and that's the way I generally work in the Congress. I will vote for good amendments, try to always improve the bill, but if the bill is basically bad or is unconstitutional, then I can't vote for that bill just because there's one small portion that is constitutional. Otherwise, I'm joining the gang that has undermined our system here for the past 50, 60 years.
If I may, that is an attitude that has distinguished you as a champion of human freedom and of the free market. Now the bill is in the Senate. In what form is it in the Senate? Is it part of that big monstrosity against which you voted? Or is it a freestanding bill to audit the Fed over in the Senate?
Well, they've already, Dodd and Corker, as I understand, have endorsed a position that's in the bill, which was similar to the Malwatt proposal and maybe a little bit worse that we had to defeat in the House committee, the House Financial Services Committee. So there's a bad provision in the financial bill of the Senate, but Bernie Sanders and Jim DeMint are working very hard to bring this up, and it is estimated that it probably won't come up this week, but it'll come up Monday or Tuesday of next week. That will be a key vote. Let me tell you, and that will tell us whether or not the people win or whether the Federal Reserve wins. And there is a coalition, the Federal Reserve, big banks, some of the Republican and Democratic leadership. But isn't it amazing that we can get this far when we have all the groups in favor of the audit and transparency? We have principled liberals, principled progressives, the libertarians, the conservatives, the constitutionalists, the grassroots Americans, the Tea Party people. They all want transparency of the Fed, and yet we're on the verge of losing this. So right now the ball is in Senator Reid's court, and he is the one that could make the difference. So I hope people, if they happen to know the senator, maybe they can call him up and ask him what he's going to do.
Well, if you look at who's introducing in the Senate, you're right. You have arguably the most conservative voting record in the Senate, Jim DeMint of South Carolina, and the most liberal, calls himself a socialist,
right.
Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Congressman Paul, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Watch.